Eddie Guerrero passed away nearly 20 years ago, but wrestling fans' memories of the legendary performer are as strong as ever. He overcame a lot to earn his place as one of the most revered wrestlers of his generation. Eduardo "Gory" Guerrero Yanez was born October 9, 1967, in El Paso, Texas. The fourth son born to Salvador "Gory" Guerrero, Eddie had huge expectations to live up to as a second-generation performer and the youngest of four prominent wrestlers in his immediate family. Gory was a well-known wrestler and promoter in Mexico, winning championships with the EMLL promotion as well as several titles in the US. He was half of a tag team with the most influential luchador of all time, El Santo, and the innovator of both the camel clutch and the Gory special submission holds.
Mexico had that golden era, and my dad was part of it.
In his book, Cheating Death, Stealing Life, The Eddie Guerrero Story, Eddie stated that his father and brothers taught him how to wrestle. Eddie's brothers, Chavo, Hector, and Mando, were all prominent wrestlers as well. Chavo had some prominent storylines in WWE, most memorably winning the Cruiserweight Championship with the son, Chavo Jr., in 2004. Hector often worked as an enhancement talent and infamously portrayed the gobbledygooker in the WWF. Mando had success in tag team action in the AWA, as well as trios matches with his brothers. Eddie wrestled for New Mexico Highlands University on a scholarship and moved on to EMLL in 1986. He went on to wrestle in local events in both the US and Mexico. Then he headed overseas, working for New Japan Pro Wrestling and meeting lifelong friend Chris Benoit. Eddie then returned to Mexico, where he began working for CMLL, formerly EMLL, wearing a mask and under the name Mascara Mágica. Guerrero said in his book he was uncomfortable under the mask, and questionable booking decisions led him to leaving for rival promotion AAA. On November 27, 1992, Mascara Mágica made his first appearance for AAA in a six-man match. Before the bell rang, teammates Mascara Sagrada and Octagon helped Guerrero remove his mask, resulting in a brawl. He grabbed a mic and explained to the crowd that he would be representing his father and his family as Eddie Guerrero. He explained in his book, "The lucha tradition is that the only time a wrestler strips off his mask is when he loses it in a match. No one had ever done something like that before." Guerrero initially teamed up in AAA with El Hijo del Santo. Their friendship would eventually dissolve, and Eddie would turn on his former friend to team with Love Machine Art Barr in 1993. Eddie described his friendship with Barr as more of a brotherhood, recalling in his book, "He made me laugh so much, I couldn't help but love him." The duo became known as Los Gringos Locos, a reviled tag team that used their American roots and rivalry with El Hijo del Santo to infuriate the mostly Mexican crowds. AAA's first American pay-per-view was a collaboration with WCW, When Worlds Collide. The show at the Los Angeles Memorial Sports Arena featured Los Gringos Locos losing a hair versus mask match against El Hijo del Santo and Octagon. The match was one of the best of Eddie's wrestling career, garnering 5 stars from Dave Meltzer of The Wrestling Observer. It would also be the last match Art Barr would ever wrestle. Slam Wrestling reports that Barr passed away in his sleep on November 23, 1994, at just 28. Extreme Championship Wrestling was known for hardcore matches and hyperviolence, but plenty of technical wizards worked there too, including Eddie Guerrero, who joined ECW in April 1995. He defeated Too Cold Scorpio for the ECW World Television title at the three-way dance event, and would go on to have a rivalry with Dean Malenko that is said to have altered how fans saw ECW. Unfortunately, none of the technical masters stuck around very long. August 26, 1995, marked the last time Guerrero and Malenko would step into an ECW ring. They had a best 2 out of 3 falls match as a farewell to the Philadelphia faithful. The match was memorable for both the technical skill of the performers and the "Please Don't Go" chants after the match ended in a draw. Chris Benoit would follow the two to WCW as well. Eddie began wrestling for WCW 4 days after his last match with ECW, facing off against Malenko again. Eddie would go on to win his first title with WCW a year later, defeating Diamond Dallas Page at Starrcade 1996 for the vacant United States Heavyweight Championship. From there, an intense rivalry with Rey Mysterio would lead to one of Eddie's best matches, a Cruiserweight Championship mask versus title match at Halloween Havoc 1997. Despite that all-timer, Eddie would lack direction in WCW afterward. A New Year's party at Eddie and his wife Vicky's home led to an argument between Eddie and WCW president Eric Bischoff. Eddie decided to take an unsafe dose of Renutrient, a legal form of GHB, and drive to the store early on the morning of January 1st. He fell asleep at the wheel and drove his Trans Am off an embankment. Eddie had renegotiated his WCW contract shortly before the accident, and Bischoff spoke on the timing on his podcast, 83 Weeks.
Eddie was of the mind that I was going to, stop the renewal conversation. And I did the exact opposite.
Bischoff said he went ahead and executed the contract. Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit, Dean Malenko, and Perry Saturn left WCW as a group, debuting in WWE on January 31, 2000. Dubbed the Radicals, the group interfered in a match between the New Age Outlaws, Al Snow, and Steve Blackman. That led to Guerrero and Saturn's first official WWF match against Road Dogg and Billy Gunn. During the closing moments of that match, Eddie went for his trademark frog splash and landed awkwardly, dislocating his left elbow. The New Age Outlaws would pick up the victory, and Eddie would be out of action for a few weeks. In his book, Eddie says that Vince and Stephanie McMahon were in his hospital room when he woke up from anesthesia. Eddie said Vince told him, "We'll use it. We'll get it over. You'll be okay." Sure enough, Eddie was allowed to recover briefly before getting right back to work, helping Dean Malenko secure a victory over S.A. Rios and starting his legendary program with China, which introduced Latino Heat. Eddie was very candid about his battles with addiction, and he talked about his pain from his New Year's Day car accident with Slam Wrestling, saying, "I'm dealing with a reconstructed ankle and 3 fractured vertebrae that I'll have for the rest of my life. I have constant pain." In his book, Eddie spoke about the strained relationship he had with his wife, Vicky, and how the weekend of WrestleMania 17 was kind of a last hurrah for the two. Vicky would leave Eddie shortly after the event. Guerrero was dependent on pills and alcohol to get through the day, and his friends knew it. In his book, Eddie wrote that he showed up to a show in Minneapolis completely messed up, and Jim Ross gave him a choice: go to rehab or lose his job. He went to rehab, relapsed, rediscovered religion, tried joining a support group, and relapsed again. Eddie was arrested and released from his WWE contract. On his podcast, Something to Wrestle With, Bruce Pritchard said that Eddie needed to realize things would be bad if they didn't change.
Eddie needed to have ramifications, and Eddie needed to lose something, I think.
Things started looking much brighter for Eddie after rehab. His independent work got him rehired by WWE, and he won the WWE Championship from Brock Lesnar at No Way Out in 2004. Arguably the biggest match of Eddie Guerrero's career was his WrestleMania 20 match against Kurt Angle. In the DVD companion to his book Cheating Death, Stealing Life, The Eddie Guerrero Story, Eddie talked about how important the match was to him, saying, "I was in one of the 3 main events. What an honor. And I got to wrestle Kurt Angle. That's another honor." Eddie and Kurt had a great match, and Guerrero retained his championship with a little help from the ropes. The match received 4 stars from the Wrestling Observer newsletter. The lasting image from that WrestleMania is that of Guerrero and Chris Benoit, 2 friends with similar journeys, celebrating their victories on the biggest stage in all of professional wrestling to close out the show. They would both be dead within just a few years. Seeing these 2 share an embrace to mark the end of a long and difficult road for them both is even tougher when you realize how tragically their stories would end. On an episode of Talk is Jericho, Kurt Angle claimed Guerrero got mad backstage because he believed Kurt was throwing real punches during a beatdown segment. Angle, Luther Reigns, and Mark Jindrak swarmed the ring, but Kurt maintains he wasn't anywhere near Eddie during the attack. Angle said, "I said, Eddie, I didn't touch you." He said, "Bull, you were stiffing me. You were beating me up. I pushed him. I didn't know what to do. He made me so mad, so I pushed him." On his own podcast, The Kurt Angle Show, Angle talked about a later lumberjack match he regrets. He said of Eddie,
"When he was backstage, he was having a lot of issues with energy, and I think it was his heart."
The match was pre-taped, so Angle says WWE was able to edit it to be presentable, but he regrets being part of it because Eddie wasn't himself. In a 2014 interview on Talk is Jericho, Chavo Guerrero Jr. described the night before Eddie's death. Chavo explained that while Eddie had been clean for 4 years, the lasting effects of addiction lingered. Chavo said, "So, he fought every day to stay off those. He really did. But they say with Vicodins and Somas and all that stuff was that it gives a lot of scar tissue on your heart because you abuse them so much." Chavo and Eddie got to fly to Minneapolis together the night before. Chavo remembered Eddie getting on the plane late and choosing to give up his first-class seat to ride with Chavo and Coach. They got to their hotel together, booked separate rooms, and made plans to work out together the next morning. The hotel contacted Chavo to tell him his uncle had passed out in his room. After the lock was removed, Chavo immediately found Eddie unconscious. He remembered Eddie's body still being warm when he got on the ground to check on him, but he said, "I saw him go from warm to cold. I'm sitting here with my brother basically dying in my arms." Despite managing to overcome his demons, Eddie Guerrero died of heart failure on November 13, 2005, at 38 years old. After Eddie died, WWE made his death a key component of Rey Mysterio's rise to the World Heavyweight Championship. Rey won the 2006 Royal Rumble match, entering at number 2 in a lowrider Chevy as a tribute to his friend. He then entered into a rivalry with Randy Orton, who was the last person Mysterio eliminated to win the Rumble. During Orton's attempt to goad Rey into putting his WrestleMania title shot on the line at No Way Out, Randy told a conflicted Mysterio, "Eddie ain't in heaven, Eddie's down there, in hell." On former WWE announcer Jim Ross's Grilling JR podcast, Ross said of Orton's promo,
"It didn't work, and it was distasteful. It was the wrong kind of heat."
While the segment was poorly received by JR and others, the story did end with Rey winning the World Heavyweight Championship at WrestleMania 22. Sasha Banks, now known as Mercedes Moné, told Ariel Helwani Meets how she reacted to Eddie's death. A teenager at the time, she had won tickets to Guerrero's memorial show in Minneapolis, but she hadn't learned about Eddie's passing until she was at the arena, when another fan informed her.
I'm crying like a little baby. I was in my mom's arms just bawling.
But she and others carry on his legacy, including breaking out his finishing move. Eddie used a jackknife splash off the turnbuckle as his finisher in CMLL, but Art Barr decided he wanted to try it and perfected it. According to Dodd WrestlePod, Too Cold Scorpio saw Art perform the splash, commenting that Barr looked like a frog while doing the move. Hence, the frog splash was born. Eddie would go on to use that move himself after Art passed away, starting a legacy that continues to this day. Moné, Rey Mysterio, and Rey's son Dominic, as well as many others, have been known to bust out the occasional frog splash, Three Amigos suplex, or Latino heat shimmy. Many wrestlers have also used what Taz dubbed the smoking gun, tossing a foreign object at an opponent and feigning an attack, usually resulting in a roll-up victory or a DQ. If you or anyone you know is struggling with addiction issues, help is available. Visit the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration website or contact SAMHSA's National Helpline at 1-800-662-HELP. That's 1-800-662-4357.